Welcome all of you to session 2. Will be beginning very soon. I think speaker and as well as the chair of the session is here. I request Professor Sanjay Kumar, please come up and chair. You are the chair of the session today. And I request Professor Yashodhara Mishra to please come on stage. She is the main speaker today and she will be speaking on women in Odia folk traditions. Very fittingly, we have more Odia audience, women audience than male audience, and consistently throughout these 2 days. So it's a kind of special recognition to the women folk. So welcome again to session 2. Professor Sanjay Kumar, who is our own, he works in KSUB, needs no introduction, but still he is a great friend of Odia's. He has many Odia friends and known for his humility and humbleness. He is a professor here since 2009 in KSUB and he has established himself in the areas of cultural studies and translation studies. He has authored many books. Many of his works are widely cited across India as well as internationally. He has been part of many interdisciplinary projects, particularly associated with some universities outside, particularly Pennsylvania and Cornell University. I welcome you, sir, and request you to chair the session. Please introduce the speaker so that we can move on. Start rolling.
A very, very good day, friends, and welcome to the second day of this conclave on rediscovering Odia language, literature, and the making of a cultural identity, and second day and the second session. And it's a great privilege and honor to have Professor Yashodhara Mishra here. I welcome you, ma'am, on behalf of the organizers and also on the behalf of Malviya Mulya Anushilon Kendra, of which I happen to be the coordinator. So you are doubly welcome here. And for your kind, Professor Yashodhara Mishra, she has a PhD in American literature, and she has served as professor of English in Madhya Pradesh in different colleges, and she has been a visiting fellow at Maison des Sciences de la Home at Paris. She has also been a senior research fellow of the University Grants Commission, and she has also been to our IAS at Sibla Institute of Advanced Study as a senior fellow, and she has participated in a lot of literary programs and conferences abroad, including United Kingdom, United States, France, Germany, and Mauritius, and many more countries. So it's really a pleasure to have you here. And not only that, she has written and published a great many books, almost 15 books, and her oeuvre stands so wide. She has written short stories, she has written novels, she does poetry, and she also has written travelogues, travel writings, as well as, and she also translates from, I guess, from English to Odia and Odia to English, both ways. Great. So, And not only that, not only she happens to be a translator, but her own works have been translated into several Indian languages and also many foreign languages. And many of her short stories and poems have been included into major anthologies. And she has got Sahitya Akademi Award, Odia Sahitya Akademi Award, the Katha Award, the Odisha Book Fair Award, and so on the list of. So we have a very, very distinguished guest here. Please join me in welcoming her once again. Without much ado, now would you like to speak from there, or you feel comfortable speaking from here? So please.
Honorable Chairperson and the august presence in the auditorium. So, I would like to delve straight into the topic offered before me today, rediscovering Odia language. So, my topic, my area would be trying to rediscover some aspects of Odia literature that is confined, that has been in the domain of folklore, and that particular area of folklore that has been or somehow used or ascribed to women, and that is, to say shortly, briefly, is Vrata Katha. Though I haven't mentioned it in my title, that is Vrata Katha. I am sure everyone who knows, who is Odia, and people from Bengal and our neighboring states also would be familiar with this word, Brata and Osa. And there is always, when there is a Osa or a Brata, I will just give a formal introduction about the term and what is meant as Brata Katha. The synopsis that I submitted was, just sums up my paper briefly. Every language and literature is enriched by oral traditions. So the topic is oral traditions among women of Odisha. And in bracket, I would have liked to keep it, this term, Brata Katha. So every language and literature is enriched by oral traditions, and so is true of Odia. These oral traditions include proverbs, games, riddles and folk tales, as well as oral epics and folk drama. In the recent times, most oral forms of literature have gradually merged into written literature, or more recently into genres that belong to the visual media. Needless to say, the oral traditions in Odia have not vanished altogether and continue as part of life in various forms. An interesting development of study in the recent times has been women's literature. Odia being one of the oldest spoken languages in the world, it also has a rich written literature constantly sustained by folk and oral traditions. My presentation would try to trace the vast and distinct oral literature of the state, which is created evidently by women. So this is the part I would like to emphasize and explore slowly in my presentation. So that is created evidently by women, it is used mostly by women and depict predominantly women characters. These are called the Brata Kathas, or stories narrated as part of certain religious rituals known as Brata or Osa, observed primarily by women. Like other states of India, Odisha also has a vast number of indigenous festivals and religious observances, many of which are meant exclusively for women. These are called the Brata or Osa. The terms derived from the original Sanskrit words Vrata and Upavasa. Unlike the Parva or festival, a Brata or Osa, see, there are festivals. This is part, in fact, a small fraction of a larger work. So I've tried to choose and pick and choose from portions that are relevant to my presentation today. So a Brata Rosha is observed, unlike a Parva, there are festivals and Bratas. So in festivals there are not many austerities, and vratas have rituals, more of rituals and austerities. And some festivals also have stories, and vrata or osa meant for women, all of them have kathas or stories which are part of the ritual. So which is a vrata is osa is observed by a brati or oseiti with austere rituals and fasting with a clear objective. So this part is important. A vrata for women always has a clear-cut objective. So I will go into the details later. So what is the objective? Most of them are for the well-being of her husband, children and family, and for an unwed girl it is for a suitable husband. Some vratas are kept with wishes to be fulfilled or certain problems to be solved by a specific deity. Mind you, I don't want to bring in the present scenario concerning women. Please don't let me drag in pride or feminism or what was that word used just recently in the self aggrandizement or whatever you call it. I mean, some sense of pride in being Odia or a Odia woman, nothing like that. I am trying to stick to the facts as far as possible and explore an area which has so far not been very much explored. So, the most remarkable feature of the Osa is the Vrata Katha, or story woven into the rituals to be read or listened to by the Osaiti. Interestingly, most of these stories have practically nothing to do with Vedic or Puranic literature, nor do they involve major Hindu gods or idols. Except a few, most kathas aim to seek the blessings of a local goddess, mostly a mother goddess, who may or may not be linked with Parvati or Lakshmi, consorts of the two of the Hindu trinity Shiva and Vishnu. But these links are mostly established towards the end of the katha. The main story, main rituals, they don't involve any major Hindu deity or idol or even Puranas, scriptures. Among other distinctive features of the Osa, it may have very little or no role of a male priest or a Brahmin interlocutor in the rituals. The Osaiti, mostly it has nothing to do with the temple going public. And mind you, the period when these Osas were popular, women naturally they were confined to the house and they were not educated. But interestingly, many of these Osas, vratas, are very popular and observed with a lot of fervor all over Odisha, even today. Mostly in most cases I have seen the story is dropped somehow. The story, they are not very sincere to reading the katha, but the vratas are observed. So, the Osaiti or worshipper is not required to go to a temple or even to use a well-crafted idol of worship. The puja materials consist of simple things like certain homemade dishes, specific flowers, fruits and vegetables. Even the deity may be made from rice, turmeric, sand, to be immersed in water or consumed in the household after the rituals are over. In earlier times, a group of women observed the Osa would listen to Vrata Katha from an elderly Osaiti, narrating this and singing from the memory. So these are the evidences to show that these are anonymous creations. These are the stories. Actually, later on, names have been attached to them, especially after the printing press came in the early decades of the 20th century, and these booklets started being available in the market for very low prices, and male names were added to it. But research has been proved that those are not there is proof who will do it. So the names which some of these stories carry, they do not seem to be the authors. Actually, they don't authorize they're not the authors of the book. So in some stories, some Vrata Kathas, sayings like, in Saradi Osa, lines like, let someone who knows the story, narrate the story, or sing the verse. So there are instructions mostly inside the Vrata Katha there are instructions as to how the Vrata has to be observed. And there is also instruction that if let someone who knows the story narrate it, which means that mostly they didn't depend on a written text. These days the story is usually read out of a booklet available in the market. Most printed Vrata Kathas have been put down on paper and published only during the early part of 20th century. Thanks to the immense efforts of eminent scholars like Gopal Chandra Paharaj, Kunja Bihari Das, Aravinda Patnaik and several other scholars of mid-20th century, several anthologies of Odia Vrata Kathas have been compiled around mid-20th century. Though many of the osas are also known to have gone extinct, obviously. And mind you, these Vrata Kathas are there, preserved as palm leaf manuscripts in our national archives and many other such libraries, where many of them are unknown, many are versions of the well-known popular Vratas with slight variations, and many of them are not known at all. Perhaps they were popular at some time and now they've gone extinct. So, though a few of these tales like the Lakshmi Purana are authored by the famous Bhakti poet Balaram Das. Incidentally, Lakshmi Purana by Balaram Das of 16th century is the most popular Vrata Katha or the Purana. I won't be discussing it because it doesn't come under this heading of women's folklore. Because it is written not only by Balaram Das, a very eminent Bhakti poet. So the authorship of several others are claimed by the publisher compilers in the first decades of 20th century. A vast number of them are preserved in palm leaf manuscripts in the state archives. This entire gamut of folk literature bears testimony to the women's lore developed over centuries through oral traditions. Many popular osas like the Sudasa, Savitri, Manamasa, Dhuti Bahana, etc. are also, there are some osas which have been authored, taken up by well-known authors, poets of the Bhakti movement and later on. And they have altered it and made them into parts of our Odia literature, of which we are very extremely proud of them. But the original versions are still there and they are still practiced in some parts of rural Odisha. So, there is a second category of osas. Mostly they are fulfillment of common needs and aspirations. Most popular osas are these, and they are for fulfillment of their common wishes like prosperity and well-being of husband and children. There is a second category of osas to overcome a dire situation or problem like barrenness. Women not having children must have been a huge problem in those days for a married woman. Death of children, fighting a disease, and these are Sashti Osa, Somnath Vrata Katha, etc. There are some more than 200 Vrata Kathas in the anthologies available today. So more than 200 which are practiced in various forms even today. And there is more than 1,000, maybe maybe a few thousands available in manuscripts, palm leaf manuscripts. Each of them reflect a contemporary society with women's life and aspirations as well as their coping strategies. This is also a very important aspect of these osas. They are also part of their coping strategies because they didn't have much options except the life which was imposed on them, and at times even their subtle resistance. So this part is very interesting. So first of all, there are mostly three categories of these vratas, and apart from them there is one which is just festivals and celebrations like Raja and Kumar Purnima, and they don't have any story or they don't have much austere rituals. But the other three, some are wish fulfillments like our Guruvara, Manavasa Guruvara. Some of them are for special problems like Sostiosa and barrenness and particular diseases to get cured of particular diseases. And the third type is there, very interestingly, they are still popular. Maybe their meanings are not yet deciphered by our educated public, educated people. But in essence, at the core of the story is resistance and also aspiration. So we'll go to it. Osas like Khudurkuni.
Please go ahead.
Okay.
You have barely begun.
I know, but I want to organize my paper because it's a huge one. So, and I would like to keep some time for questions also. So, Osas like Khudurkuni reflect the life of a young unmarried girl in a patriarchal situation. See, Khudurkuni Osa, normally it would go as almost a festival or utsav, parva. But there is also Osa Katha, Brata Katha. These Brata Kathas are part of the ritual, as I've already mentioned. But here, there is the story of an unmarried, there are very few stories like this. And this also picturizes the life during our maritime days, the height of it and perhaps the decline. So that is another part of this topic. I won't go into the details. But Khudurkuni Osa, in the beginning, there is a young unmarried girl who is the apple, the eye of her brothers and her parents, but in no time, and she's asking for toys made of gold and silver. But after a while, when her parents are gone and her 7 brothers have gone out for a voyage for trading, she has no rights in the house. Okay, so how it declines, it's very interesting, the topic itself. So this, we can see some resistance here. This is one type of story, a few. So the texts are often a reflection of social life, morals, aspirations and layers of values that sustain the society. They at first glance may seem no different from simple fairy tales, uncomplicated and flat stories of wish fulfillment. But a closer study reveals their multi-layered significance. I will just mention the comments of some of our major writers just here to show that our major scholars in the mid-20th century have studied these and they have given some serious thought to this literature. It has not been completely ignored. But somehow of late I think there is not much study on it. So here I will just quote, there is a big, there is a very impressive book, compilation by Aurobindo Patnaik, Brata Sahitya. Yes, you are the right person. So, to correct me if I am wrong. So in Brata Sahitya, in the introduction, there are some very interesting comments by some of our major scholars. So Surendra Mahanti, our major writer, very famous writer, he says, so they are observed by, about Bratas, he says, they are observed by women of home. In Odia, I have tried to translate it. I wish I knew that I had 1 hour, so I could have brought the Odia originals also. So they are Kulanari. So they are observed by Kulanari, women of our homes, and though they have slight semblance of festivals, they do not involve large-scale social involvement. They are observed exclusively inside the family. They are exclusively family affairs. This is in the foreword. And then he also writes, Surendra Mahanti, there is no indication or attempt at deeper spiritual significance, nor are there complex religious rituals. They do not even require, if ever, a priest, though of late priests are being introduced. The brati or woman involved plays the role of the priest. So this has been mentioned by our scholars also, and this is mentioned subtly, I mean in the Bratakatha itself. So though the priest class of late, though the priest classes of late are trying to Sanskritize these, forcing them into the fields of Puranas and scriptures. So this is by This is a comment by Surendra Mahanti. It's extremely rare to find Vedic gods or goddesses. In these, the purpose is to be saved from the purpose of most of these vratas, to be saved from a dire situation or the fulfillment of a wish. These are not born. Then there is another author, the scholar whose name I am missing. These were not born in the ashrams of Vedic rishis, nor the creator of scriptures or mantras conceptualized these. Coming from many sources, from people living close to nature, they have been absorbed into the Hindu folds. So, many of these stories towards the end, later on, words like they have been taken from Puranas. Puranas names have been mentioned, but there is no proof really. When you go to the original Puranas like Bhavishya Purana or Skanda Purana, if you go to those Puranas, these stories don't feature there at all. Like other vernacular Indian languages, the primary Odia literature has developed with these, and that is another. See, there can be many branches of this research. I am doing a simplistic study. So these are the possibilities: the linguistic, the socio-cultural study, and of course the religious significance or whatever. There are many possibilities. So I hope some of the students, younger people, will take it up, if some have not already taken it up as per research. So like other vernacular languages, the primary Odia literature has developed from these Vrata literature. Because you can distinctly see the difference between the language used in Vrata Kathas and Puranas. Like the Guruvar, there are a series of Guruvar Vratas, apart from Mahalakshmi Vrata, Manavasa Guruvara by Balaram Das. When we see the difference, we can know that Balaram Das writes in chaste Odia and in poetry, developed poetry, ornamental poetry, and the whole thing has a proper shape, okay, like a Purana. So it can be called a Purana. But whereas these kathas, they are very short and they are very crude, very simplistic narration, very simplistic, and the language is extremely simplistic. I will try to quote a few sentences if you once I get time. So in its introduction in the 82 edition, Raicharan Das says, in these institutions we get to see some amount of pathos. This is very interesting, I found this very interesting. In these institutions, we get to see some amount of pathos, some rebellion and some impoverishment. So the purpose of these brothers was not merely wish fulfillment or solution of the problem as it seems, but there is also resistance and self-expression. So there is some rebellion also. So these are scholars about during the 60s and 70s who have mentioned these. So some rebellion and some impoverishment, a little fun or entertainment, a little emotional sustenance, some moral teachings, and above all, an attempt to keep balance and try to rise above their social situation. That is the social situation that is pitiable and tragic. Also, there is a subtle satire at an aristocratic culture. It is interestingly, very often you see a very subtle satire that runs beneath the lines. Satire whom aimed towards people who have power over them and against whom they dare not rise up or raise their voice. So, many scholars feel that they have been superimposed on the Puranas, and then about the claim that they come from such and such Puranas, so they are superimposed, and in the names of some major writers also. And then from where they come, their sources, this also, I will just read one or two lines. Many scholars feel that they have been superimposed on the Puranas at a later stage, after they got accepted by people. Scholars have traced many vratas to Buddhist and Jain traditions, also to tribal practices. Names of gods and goddesses are indigenous, though at times attempts have been made to link them to Hindu gods. I mean existing mainstream Hindu gods that they are mentioned in the scriptures. The characters are limited though of different names of many kingdoms, but the events, episodes and locales are similar. At times veiled tone of rebellion against casteism and priesthood also comes. It is also appears. So, and here I may quote another line by Chittaranjan Das. He says that these are all rooted only in a materialistic life and spring from the essential fear of life-threatening situations and uncertainties. And there also, in the solution, there is nothing elevating, morally elevating or emotionally, and they are cheap assurances, these things. They are reassurances and then it is said that the Prince Charming does come, but only at the last stage of the story. This is also important. After her problems have been solved and she is blessed with health and wealth. So I will come to it, an interesting part now. Straight away I will come. Many of you must have been familiar with A.K. Ramanujan's Flowering Tree. The Flowering Tree, the book. Many of the students of literature and many who are interested in anthropology and folk literature. So I will quote him. I will straight away go to him, A.K. Ramanujan, and later on, if I get time, then I will come back to where I left. So A.K. Ramanujan in Flowering Tree, the Flowering Tree is a translation of a popular folktale in Kannadiga. I am sure you all know about him. So let me read. A.K. Ramanujan, in his series of essays that altered the study of South Asian folklore, has some interesting and irrefutable conclusions about the characteristics of women-centered tales, most likely created by women. So how do we know? How do we know that these, I have already told you, that these are distinctly different from the mainstream literature, but what are the hallmarks? So here he gives us a very beautiful strategy that we can use to analyze. And here the poems he takes for translation and discussion are folk tales, which he calls stories of our inner courtyard. Inner courtyard is the phrase he often uses, A.K. Ramanujan. And that book was so popular, there was such a path-breaking type of research that it followed a series of his own lectures on women's literature, women and oral literature by women. Most of these stories A.K. Ramanujan claims to have heard from his mother and grandmother, and the inner courtyard, that is the inner parts of the families where women, mothers and grandmothers and aunts perhaps, tell their small children, but they are just folk tales, not related to any religious practice. So what are the clues to see, to guess or to analyze these folk tales that might be created by women? So he says not only created by women, these are about women. The content is about women and they are mostly consumed, enjoyed for women, those folk tales. And they are created by women and mostly they are authorless, they are anonymous, they are oral literature. So though Odia Vratakatha would not fall under the category of folklore, being part of folk religion of the land. So Vratakathas, these days there is a lot of research going on about folk religions. So this is part of folk religion, but I am going to look into the literary part of it. So Odia Vratakatha would not fall under the category of folklore, being part of folk religion of the land. There are ample features to show that this is a genre of literature that entirely belongs to the domain of women. To begin with, all the Katha tales have women as protagonists, the main character, major characters, and also the antagonists. Their enemies against whom they fight, they're all women, invariably. And then we can take some stories, for example, as examples. The occasional male characters are invariably peripheral to the story. You'll be surprised, even the husband or a father-in-law or even father, all male characters, they might be there, but they're in the periphery. They don't contribute to any major action of the story. The occasional male characters are invariably peripheral to the story. The problems and dilemmas are those usually encountered by women living in closed traditional societies. This is A.K. Ramanujan's view. The narrator during the Osa ritual, again I'm coming back to our Vrata Kathas. The narrator during the Osa rituals is a woman and the listeners are women. The deity is most often a mother goddess, again a woman, though in rare cases it is Shiva or Lakshmi Narayana, which is just for the sake of it, because they don't contribute to the major actions of the story. Practically all Odia women, even those even those among the younger generation, would be acquainted with at least a few popular Vrata Kathas. The stories have a cryptic style with very few characters and practically no visual description. This is very rudimentary. You can't straight away bring in these Vrata Kathas as part of literature because they are very rudimentary in style. Like I will tell you, Sadhavani Sakalu Uthila. खंडिए पाट पिंधिला आ खंडिए उपराण देला हलदी काटुआ नहीं गाधेबा को गला गाधोई गला but just two words there is no ornamentation or trying to beautify the work of as a work of art or literature. Practically all Odia women, even thank you. So the narrator during the Osa ritual, yes, the stories have a cryptic style with very few characters and practically no visual descriptions or elaborate narration. After an abrupt beginning, the events lead to a problem, the story ending in a simple, inevitable solution with the intervention of the concerned goddess, invoked through the Osa rituals. These are a familiar set of characters taken from all sections of life. So referred to by their caste and social class. So often you will see characters even without their names, like the Sadhavani. I'm forgetting the Mantri's, the minister's wife. Queen, Rani and Mantri's wife also. And there are Raja Jema Anti Kahile, Sadhava Jio, Sadhava Gara Bohu, and Sadhava's daughter-in-law, the Brahmin widow, and mostly Brahmin characters are widows. This is also very interesting, that Randi Brahmani, she is also a very popular character, very often portrayed character. Then Maluni, Hadiani, Saradi Budi, Thoboni, Chakulia Ponda Rastri, or Chakulia Ponda Jio. These are the characters. All of them, you can guess from their social background, their predicament, their situation. The narratives do not have any solemn mood or preaching style of the scriptures. In fact, many of them carry the entertaining qualities of popular folklore, where animals, birds and supernatural beings are portrayed as characters alongside human beings. A Vrata Katha is a simple tale about a woman who falls into woe and is abandoned by all around her, but finally at times helped by other women, at times by even animals and birds, is rescued by a goddess who returns her world to her many times over. Her close associates and antagonists are all women, like the mother-in-law, sister-in-law, sister or a close friend. They could even be a bird or a snake. There is a story I just quoting offhand, Nagala Chaturthi. I don't know if some of you are familiar with the story. There is a nodding. So Nagala Chaturthi, the protagonist of the story, she goes to her backyard and she finds a Naguni, Naga, and she befriends her. In male stories, you will see Naga, snakes and animals are not mostly friends or happy. And the Naguni, she lays, and suddenly she finds that the snake has laid eggs in the kitchen. And then she calls this protagonist and she says, what is this? And she says that, see, I had no other place, so I laid my eggs in your kitchen and I am going to Puri to see Rath Yatra. So please take care of my eggs. And she agrees. So this is the type of their world. It is so very different from what we read in the mainstream literature. So the few male characters in them, the father-in-law, the husband, sons and brothers, or even the king or the merchant, do not play a central role. The protagonist is never shown to be facing a moral dilemma, though values and moral directions of the society pervade through the narration. It is never raised as a problem, a moral dilemma or a social problem. I mean, clear-cut social problem. And but the moral standards, it runs in the story, through the story. A typical Vrata Katha may begin thus: went Ashadha and came Sravana. Ashadha jai, Sravana posita. Cheti Maluni got up early in the morning, took a lump of cow dung and cleaned the house, went to the Vrindavan and plucked white flowers and dubogasa todila. Took Aula paste and Aula stick, Aula kathi on the Aula paste, bota made, Gadhiva Kukola, Dantavasila. And it's very simple and cryptic. And then went to the Padma Pokhari Pujai. So this is Chaturmasya Guru Vrata. So there is a series of Guru Vratas apart from the Manavasa Guru Vrata. Most of the Osas discussed above are for young women, married or unmarried, living under the strict patronage of their husbands, in-laws, brothers or parents. However, there is a third group of Vrata Kathas dealing with fiercely independent adult women wielding or seeking extraordinary power. So I will try to give some simple examples of these three categories of how much time do I have? Okay. So can I have some question answer time after that? Okay, thank you. So apart from this festival type posas or vratas or rituals like Raja and Kumar Purnima, and even Kudurkarni Kuni is a wish fulfillment one, and the problem comes and goes, a social problem. So the first category is a simple wish fulfillment, and then the second one is facing a genuine problem. I will take just one example, the Duti Bahana Usa. I am sure many women present here would be familiar with it. The story has a very interesting line of social problem, trying to tackle with a social problem and trying to bring it out of the homes as a form of discourse. Many of these stories have been used as a social an opportunity to make a personal or internal problem, family problem or social problem into the arena of a social discourse. And Duti Bahana, let me just briefly tell you the story. There is a Brahmani, Randi Brahmani, there is a widow Brahmin, and she makes rice. Dhana kutikiri, Rajanka pakutu piye, somehow she makes a living, very difficult, very poor lady. And she has also a friend or a helper who helps her, who is from a lower caste. So, this lady, this Brahmin lady, she has a deadline to meet. She has a deadline to meet and she has to deliver this amount of rice husked rice at the palace, and it is cloudy. So she prays to the sun god that I will give you whatever you want me to as dakshina, and please shine for a while so that I can make the rice. And the sun god comes to her in a dream and she says, you must offer yourself to me. Okay, that is, he would like to sleep with her, to be in simple words. And then only I am going to make the sun shine today. So he makes the sun shines brightly, and at night the sun god comes. But sun is a beautiful god, devata. But what this Brahmani does, in her own cottage, she makes her attendant sleep who belongs to a lower caste, because you see in the society, there is no forgiving for a Brahmin widow transgressing the moral norms. So then she sleeps elsewhere. And some ladies are nodding, I think they know the story. Yeah. So then what happens, the sun god comes and he is disappointed, he is not happy to see that he has been duped, and there is another woman, not the lady who had taken a fancy for. So he returns, something expresses his displeasure and goes back, and there is a small patch of vegetables in the garden, in the backyard, kosala kiari, in her pipe, in the family Brahmani. So he urinates there, and the Brahmin lady, she consumes, cooks and eats that kosala sago, and she gets pregnant. Okay, so now interestingly, there is no immediate punishment as such. We may ask, why wasn't she punished, or there was some decree or some judgment on her during her time of pregnancy, or no. She gave birth to a child, but she was ostracized by the whole village. But there is a son, and the son also goes to the Chattasari, to the village school, and there children tease him, calling him a Babua, one who doesn't have a father. So she comes and comes home. The mother prays to sun god that, you see, this is how you have punished me for no reason at all. And the sun god says, we have to with her prayers, he says that I will accept him as my son in front of the entire village, or all the people. So all the people are there. The sun god comes in a chariot and takes the boy, puts him in his lap, and then puts him back, and then pours expensive size patto sari or ankara also showered on the Brahman. So imagine this problem has been, the solution is not a tactical solution, but this problem has been faced and brought into discourse, and this has been made into the practice part of a religious brata. And one third category I have to, I can't miss, that is I find it the most interesting. I will read some parts of it which I have translated from the text. It is there later on from my mobile, I will read it. So here there is a third category, there is that depicts the aspirations, unusual, unimaginable aspirations of women who are clearly downtrodden and poor and helpless. So this is the story. This is Chaiti Mangalvar Osa. Chaiti, the sweeper woman, Chaiti Hadiani. Chaiti, the sweeper woman who worships goddess Sarvamangala, incurs the wrath of the king and faces a series of misfortune. The story, sorry, it's not here, it's elsewhere, I will try to read. And then the king kills her 7 able-bodied sons who are revived by the goddess. They are killed several times. So the story runs thus: the Chaiti Hadiani body sakalu jharu mane pahara karibaku gala, raja uasa agare se pahara jharu pahara korthula. So she has the wealth. Another important thing, sorry I have missed, I will mention it just now very briefly. So she sees the king who has 100 queens but no children. So she says, Sakalu Sakalu Antu Kudara Mohan Dekhili, Kezani Kana Miliva. That means she feels more wealthier than the king. And the king is so angry, he takes all her 7 sons and beheads them. And then she goes to her goddess, she prays to, instead of mourning over her dead sons, she just starts praying and worshipping with rituals. Sarva Mangala. Mangalbar, ये तो Mangala, Sarva Devi Sarva Mangala. So she finds all her 7 sons coming back, able-bodied, more able-bodied and happier than ever. So the king takes those young men again and again and kills them in various ways, each way more torturous than the previous one, letting them be trampled over by elephants and cutting them up into pieces and throwing their bodies pieces into the gorge. But the boys again come back to the mother. And then finally the king, defeated and humbled, arrives at Chaiti's door offering his apologies. This is something extraordinary. And the king, it is not mentioned why the king never tried to punish Chaiti herself, or why Chaiti didn't apologize before the king. It is not mentioned. So and what does the king do? Instead, he tells his people, his ministers, that take us to Chaiti's house. We want to be her friend. Let us find out whom she worships, where does she derive her strength from, and we would like to see. That means, so I would like to find out the source of her power. And he goes with an elephants and horses and all other musical paraphernalia. So the king wants to be her Maitra Vasudha, and ready to worship the goddess she worships. In these stories, the ultimate wish is to be at par in status and power with the king. So this is something extraordinary. And at the end, what happens? Normally, I will just, in a few lines, I will tell you the difference between stories by men and by women. Chaiti here, she doesn't want to be the king, or she is already married, and there is no Prince Charming coming to marry the heroine here. But here, taking a very different turn, the queen, the goddess Mangala says that I will make you the mighty Raja of a Rajya. So this word, I don't know how many of you have noticed this word, but I would request Kailash Babu. Mighty Raja. This word has come in several versions of the story. Mangala Usa. So here she doesn't want to marry a Prince Charming, the heroine of the story. She doesn't want to be a queen of a big kingdom. She wants to be a mighty Raja herself. So this is the height of aspirations, and that too Chaiti Hadiani. And then when there is in another version, in one version there is Chaiti Hadiani, she is of the lower caste, and another version there is a Brahmin widow. There are all these stories. Bratas have also different versions with protagonists belonging to different castes. So here the Brahmin widow, who is blessed by the goddess with the boon that she would be the female king or mighty Raja of Sinhala, and sometimes even in Sinhala Dvipa. And here just the differences between a male popular folktale and a folktale evidently written by women, or belonging to the women's arena or domain, is that the protagonist or the central figure of a folktale, normal folktale popular among men or written obviously by men, is a young man going out for adventure. I have somehow It is there somewhere. Let me just sum it up. He is going and it is in Odia you must have heard Raja Puo, Mantri Puo, Kotuala Puo, Monokuvale. And then they meet many adversaries, maybe Rakshasa, they kill there and there are enemies or foes or different other, maybe a huge snake or whatever. And at the end there is a prize for them, prize for the hero. And the prize is Raja Jema or Tuka Rajya. Tell me a folktale where the story doesn't have a folktale, where the young man doesn't get a beautiful queen, beautiful paramour, and also very often a half of a kingdom or maybe an entire kingdom. You will find no such thing in these Bratakathas where the woman is not only the woman, as I told you, all the characters are women, the peripheral, the men are in the periphery. And here, supposing Chaiti Hadiani, she has the seven sons have no role at all. And the husband is never mentioned. The husband and the people who have power in the family, they are just not mentioned. It is Chaiti Hadiani who is sweeping the roads. And second is, in the male tales authored by men, the problem comes, okay, the problems are solved and faced by the hero, and at the end the prize comes. For Bratakathas or women's tales, she is already married and has children in the beginning. This is the major difference. If you read this women's tales, you will never find a story folktale written by a man where a woman or a man is already married and has a family and children. So these women, and they are proud of they safeguard their family, especially children, sons. There are many type of stories to safeguard the health and life of their children. And then the woman at the end, she overcomes the problems, and then sometimes, as I told you, very rarely, she is even taken to Vaikuntha, she is taken to different lands by the goddess or her helpers, and there she meets someone and gets some extraordinary power and comes back. These things are there, but never about the Prince Charming and these things. So I think, and some other, maybe it will come during the discussion. So this is all about it, the Bratakathas, and we have a huge reservoir of these women's tales or Bratakathas which would come under the domain of women's literature, which could be called, it is about women, for women and by women. This is the characteristic which distinguishes them from the commonly read or popular folk tales of India. So this is, I hope, some research scholars, younger research scholars will rediscover our language.
All stories and all thoughts, no matter how good and interesting they have to stop somewhere, and therefore, even though we didn't want to stop you, but we had to, keeping in view the time constraints. But we have a couple of minutes to take some questions, comments, observations. But my request is that keep your comments and observations small and short, so that we can take 3-4 questions rather than stick to just one. Yes, please.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Okay. All right. Since he has started, yes. And after all, women's first. So therefore, yes.
Good afternoon, ma'am. Has this institution of Osas and brothers always been women-centric, or has this, since its inception, or has it evolved in this way with time?
As we find them today, going to the palm leaf manuscripts are the only way to find them. There is no separate history exists or history of literature. So this is how we find them. And the language shows that this must have been how the Odia language at the beginning of
So they have always been women-centric. Are there any particular scientific or sociological reasons why?
Of course, it is for you to discover and do research. It's a very rudimentary outlines that I've done. I hope one of you will find the answers.
Feminism is not something which is of recent origin always. You know, women have been around ever since human beings are here. So they always carved some kind of space for themselves, whether it came to our notice or not, whether we did acknowledge their stories or not, but they always had their stories, they always communicated amongst themselves and etc. Sorry, I just took it because I
No, this is how, this was the intention of my presentation, that we take into account, we look at their situation with a new angle, we rediscover our literature, where all these things exist, and find out how our women lived all through the ages, how our society was, and what were their problems, how were they solved. And after all, the women, it was the women who brought up the children. So a lot of cultural upbringing belonged to the women's domain. Okay, so it is not as though the women's world was different from the men's world.
The society being patriarchal, it is quite difficult for women to express and keep their opinions. So for example, we may say some authors also have a pen name as men's name. They have to write what their imaginations and their opinions in the name of a man.
Yeah, you are right.
But these hardships and fastings, but they are being communicated easily among women.
that is what she has been trying to tell us, that sometimes it so happens that if you are not able to resist openly and directly, so you take the route of subversion, right? And these stories that she was saying, Vrat Kathas, right, they are also highly subversive in nature, right? So that is how they resist. So there are ways to resist. You don't always come into direct opposition because you know that the men are dominant. So then you find a way to, right?
Yeah. One thing I think I forgot to tell you, that it's not only Manavasa Guruvar that has been brought into the mainstream literature by Balaram Das. The names of eminent writers have been ascribed, many Vratakathas have been ascribed to important writers. So like this in Chaiti Hadiani story, there is the authors in one version in the Pamli manuscripts, the one version has the author as Balaram Das. So I doubt it, but that poem, I see the king's decision to go to Chaiti Hadiani. Imagine even today, a working class woman, poor and helpless, she will say that I will show the power that we a lesson like this. See this type of resistance. This was some type of daydream that she thought that she could transgress all the limitations of her society, of her caste, of her financial condition through some help of supernatural help. And finally, these lines I wanted to, because I have written some poetry also and do translations, I want these lines, if I may. So what does the king say? The king is repentant. When he finds it 7 times, the dead sons have come back, healthier than ever, stronger than ever. So he says, the repentant king wants to befriend Chaiti, calling his servants. The king says, this is the literal translation, like a child. Do you have any more question?
No, there are other questions, I think.
Now, these few lines, because I would like to show how some of it was somehow brought in, because this is fairly interesting reading, makes interesting reading, could be part of good literature also, mainstream literature. Like a child or derelict, my wits did leave me. My mind ceased to see the holy from the sin. This is the king, repentant king. Come, let us go fast to the sweeper woman's house. I would surely like to be a friend of hers. To which god does To which god does she offer worship? Come, let's also worship at the same god's feet. Saying this, the great king left his abode and entered the sweeper woman's threshold. Beholding him, the woman fell at his feet. To his highness with folded hands did she beseech. How come the great king arrives here thus? This surely astounds and surprises me much. Hear thou, sweeper woman, the king then says. From now on we would like to be your friends. In so many ways have I punished thee. For all my faults, please do forgive me. Which god do you worship? Tell me please. To the same god let our queens worship be. So this is how it also breaks into fairly readable literature. I don't know, but the pattern remains the same.
Yes,
So this, I get an opportunity, and I'd like to thank the chair for giving an opportunity. A student of law. So actually, this is a very serious observation I have. I'm at East Law and I'm a student of law also. A very serious observation, and it's not only to the chair or to the speaker, to the August gathering also. I'd like to quote Manu on 2 occasions. My Sanskrit may not, but I will translate in Hindi. Pita rakshati kumare, bharta rakshati yovane, रक्षंती स्त्रीवीरे पुत्र ना स्त्री स्वतंत्रा माहिती। बचपन में पिता, यौवनावस्था में पति और बुढ़ापे में पुत्र स्त्री की रक्षा करते हैं। स्त्री स्वतंत्रता का पात्र नहीं। एक और कोट करते हैं, पति चाहे दुराचारी हो, व्यभिचारी हो या गुणों से विहीन हो, साध्वी स्त्री उसको देवता मानते हैं। Our old literature, where you are talking about Brat Katha, etc., just make complete. Old literature, they provoked women to commit sati. The husband was dying, the widow was committing sati due to these literatures. Okay? Due to these literatures, our Hindu Succession Act passed in 1956, which deprived women from father's property. Okay? 2005 it has been that amended. Okay, so is there a single Brat for a husband? We have an number of Brat for women. Don't you think that the Brat and Osas, they are strengthening the patriarchal structure of the society and they are depriving women from getting their rights? This is for the reason that we have passed so many legislations. 1 minute. We have passed the Hindu Succession Act. We have passed Protection of Women in Domestic Violence Act. We have passed Dowry Prohibition Act. Due to these all things only, that these legislations could not be properly implemented. So this is my observation. Please. Now, what is your view regarding this?
See, I am not trying to pass any judgment. As I told you in the beginning, I am not trying to put in feminist ideas into these stories. I want to just bring them to these literature to the light that shaped our literature and our culture also. These have profound contribution to every aspect of our life, Odisha life. So if many of it, most states perhaps they have been, when they have vanished or they have been destroyed, if we still have them, we could try to find out what are those aspects that have vanished over the times and how did our women try to cope. These are also coping strategies, I said. Coping strategies. See, because they were not educated, and yes, they were under the power of husband, father, and so these were their coping strategies. Okay, these are not. They were not trying to reform the society. These were to strengthen themselves. Obviously, very obviously.
I know you have many more questions, but we can have those questions over lunch.
I have three questions, so I'll take them to the coffee tea place.
It is quite natural that there are more questions, but due to constraint of time, I think we should not take more questions. Thank you, Professor Sanjay Kumar, for taking charge of the session. Thank you, Speaker. for giving a talk which is sociology, history, linguistics, everything at the same time.
I would just like to add just something, just a moment, just one moment. That is, maybe for your information, what we did once, and that was way back in 2009, and since he had referred to that text, of course he did elaborate on that, Varram Das's Lakshmi Purana. And of course, she doesn't consider it as a folk and all that. That is another debate, I will not go into that. But very interesting that text, if you call it mainstream text, and it's nothing but a Vrat Katha, even though it has a name, Quran, etc., or whatever, it has generated a lot of folklore in our side, in Bhojpuri area. And I discovered many songs. And what we did, about 17 years back, I invited a troupe. There is one, many of you would know him, Gaurang Das. He does puppet theatre, Ravan Chaya. So he did perform Lakshmi Puran through Ravan Chaya, and I transformed that Lakshmi song which we found here in Bhojpuri area into a Nautanki, and we staged it here in BHU, in Gyan Pravat, and I also took it to the village from where I had got that song. So folk and they're all intertwined, and they are connected, and they do travel.
It is also, sir, I don't deny the fact. Just because I don't bring it to the area of my discussion today, it is not that I disown its importance. It is extremely important to our literature, and it is one of the major works of 16th century. So I thought that it is discussed enough. People all over, it has been translated so many times too, and it has been presented. There are several translations available. So there is nothing more that I could add to it.
Is that you find Bhojpuri counterpart, and
yes,
it is a regional song which is sung at the time of marriage.
Okay. So we had a string of beautiful talks across these 2 days. Being a student of sociology, I think the best one, Professor Nayak, and the last one, we started best and ended with the best talks also. So I now request, maybe in the natural justice of things, one of our Bhabis, Sangeeta Bhaujo, please come and honor our speaker today, main speaker, Professor Mishra. Please come up. Sorry. Okay.
Doesn't matter.
Please honor Professor Sanjay Kumar. Sir, Professor Sanjay Kumar, sir, please honor.
I would like to request Professor Sanjay Kumar to felicitate our
ठीक है So this is the end of all plenary sessions, and it will be followed by lunch. I think post lunch there is a round table and many other programs till 4 o'clock, I believe. Okay, thank you so much, sir. Thank you, madam.
Jandan ya, roti ya beja. थैंक यू।
खाना
क्या होगा चंदन भैया हिसाबात करो बढ़िया से
आया मु गोटे बड़ आर्टिकल लिखिली पुरुष माने साबित प्रश्न अनुसार
सिस्टम से अनुसार चलता आज कल आज हिसाब देख
ये स्कूल को स्कूल
more favored, which is society maintenance tax. About other normal functions.
भाई सबसे